So, Rand Paul's new constitutional amendment, does it really do anything? Well, before I give my opinion, let me go through this article that he published through the Washington Times a couple days ago. And, Rand Paul's a smart guy, and I'm not here to argue anything different, but I think we need to understand some central points after reading this article. And in it, he goes on to state that he wants to amend the Constitution, where he says, I have introduced a constitutional amendment stating, quote, Congress shall make no law applicable to a citizen of the United States that is not equally applicable to Congress, end quote. This amendment also contains two provisions that apply that same principle to the executive branch and judicial branch of the federal government. So that sounds great. I mean, you can't really argue with that. It goes on to state, I have proposed a, quote, read the bills, end quote, resolution that would forbid voting on legislation until each bill is posted online and the Senate has been in session for at least 1 day for each 20 pages. If a bill is 40 pages, this means it couldn't be voted on until at least 2 session days had passed. It makes perfect sense to give lawmakers adequate time to understand legislation they are going to vote on. Again, sounds awesome. His last proposal, perhaps one of the most important reforms Washington needs, is recycling the people who run the government. The time for term limits has come, and in fact, is long overdue. Most of the outlandish laws foisted upon us, like Obamacare, are concocted by people who spent so much time in government they've become completely out of touch with the rest of the country, and the influence of lobbyists and other special interest groups that play such an influential role in Washington decision-making, and the need to limit congressmen's and senators' terms become even more apparent. So those all sound great. And as I was reading that, I was like, man, Rand Paul's really up there in the Senate, seems to be fighting for the American people and standing up for what he believes. Then I looked down on my computer desk and I've got this little pocket constitution right here. There we go. And it says on the front cover, the Constitution of the United States. And right underneath that is a quote from George Washington where it says, it's only keepers, the people. Which brings me to the central point of this whole article. That you need to actually put an amendment into the Constitution that lawmakers would make laws that actually apply to them is crazy. I mean, if this does go through, which is a difficult process, but even if it did, you've got a federal, triangle of power, and they all work together to where they don't have to comply with these laws. And the central point that, especially a lot of our founding fathers said that to make a country, to make this Constitution and Republic last, was that the people have to be educated and moral. And you can argue to what extent, but the point is, if people don't know and they keep voting in their senators that keep fucking them over, then this isn't going to do anything. They're still going to get fucked over. I mean, if you need to put a provision that says, we need adequate time to pass the bills, I mean, we shouldn't even need anything like that. The American people need to just start voting these people out. I mean, that's the only thing that we should do. I mean, the fact that somebody could propose legislation in 24 hours, like the healthcare bill, there wasn't enough time to read it or whatever, whoever voted on that bill should just be kicked out for that very purpose, that you're voting on something, I mean, if they voted yes for it, that you're voting on something that you haven't read. That's just irresponsible. So the only thing that really needs to be done is the American people have to wake up. Now, Rand Paul's strategy is beautiful because it's going after the typical stupid American voter. And, who's going to vote against that in the Senate or House? That's political suicide. And what American citizen isn't going to like these ideas? Now, what Rand Paul is doing is underhandedly trying to, basically, the way I'm looking at it is the American people are too stupid to do this, so he's going to try and fix the problem himself. But you can't fix stupid people. And as long as the American people don't understand how government's supposed to work, and the principles of this country that it was built on, you're constantly going to have the same recurring problems. I mean, they'll just find new sneaky ways to screw us. Which it might be harder for them to do. Which it's cool that he's doing this, but the main issue lies is that the American people are stupid, and we need to be educated on the way things really are and how government really works and the principles of this country before we start fixing anything majorly. And that goes along, I mean, if you look at term limits, which Rand Paul is proposing. Now, I've thought about this issue for a while, and I always hear, emails going around or articles about term limits, and that's going to fix everything. But it's really not, because the Constitution was set up with term limits. And, senators are 6 years, representatives are 2 years, president is 4 years, and, of course, the president is only limited to 2 terms that he can run. Senators and representatives can constantly keep going over and over. But the point is that those 6 years, if your senator screws up, why are you voting them back into office? The real issue is American people have to vote these people out. That's what the 6-year terms were made for, the 2-year terms, the 4-year terms for president. Even the Supreme Court has limits on it. Now, it's not a life position. Okay, they're based on good behavior, and Congress has the power to hold them accountable for making bad decisions like, let's say, Obamacare. But it all comes back down to the American people. Why are you voting in shitty senators and shitty representatives again? It's our fault. It's all our fault. Every shitty law that's passed is our fault. Every corrupt politician out there that's making money off us, it's our fault. It always comes back down to us. And again, that's what the Founding Fathers said. The people have to be educated. It's not bulletproof. There's always loopholes in everything, and we've already seen, the Constitution, the way it can be abused and is abused. But what it was supposed to come back down to is the American people. I mean, you weren't supposed to fool us this easily, and now we're all ignorant on these issues. We've all become complacent and decadent, and this is what we get. This is rebirth of the republic. It's finding out why these issues were so important again, because we're going down this path of such despotism. So my main point here is I like Rand Paul's solutions, but they're short term and they're short lived. The real issue is the American people.